Well, you guys voted? I I think this is voting. That is what's happening here, right? This is voting, right? Yeah, well, you voted. And you chose that next video should be on a tempo plant deck focused on being competitive. And I should have done that a while ago. You see, I've got a bit of a problem now. This deck is still definitely competitively playable. I currently have a 75% win rate with it, I'll quickly show you. However, it used to be an 85% win rate, and I stopped playing it recently because I have been losing multiple games in a row, so I don't know how low this would go if I kept playing it. Probably still above 50%, so it'd still win more games than it loses, but probably not as high as it was before. Essentially, a card was added to the game that makes this deck cry, and a lot of people are using it, and whenever it gets played against you, you kinda just concede. I'm kinda hating this card. But we'll get back to that later. Guess who forgot to get back to that card? Me! So yeah, basically the reason why Shawm is a problem for this deck is because generally this deck uses high health units with low attack in the early game to snowball out of control and essentially buff those things up until their high health means they're basically unkillable, but also that they now have high enough attack that they're also a significant threat that needs to be dealt with or the opponent will die. That's a really good game plan until you introduce a card that's a 7/6/6 that essentially insta-kills a monster for free and then gives the opponent a reward for it. Now obviously this is supposed to be a balanced card, and it is in most cases, because of the idea that it's super easy for your opponent to just kill it. The plant deck really cannot just kill this. I'll mention this later, but I only have one source of direct damage. Well, technically two, but one of the other cards is one that you should really always be hitting face with. And so that means I have basically no options to kill Shawm straight away if it's played. Usually, I would use the units I already have on the board to attack into any threats, and that works most of the time because the units I already have on the board are usually tanky enough and big enough that anything that needs to be killed the opponent plays can just be killed by attacking in the units I already have on the board, and maybe sometimes I just need to use some buffs to get the reach I need. With Shawm, since they instantly remove one of my units on the board and have 6 health, they are basically never able to be killed just by attacking my units into it, which means that essentially almost every time Shawm gets played against this deck, the opponent gets a free kill and a free Shadow Crystal, and there's basically nothing you can do about it, and it sucks. So yes, I know that this is literally only one card added to the game, but I genuinely believe it has actually reduced the win rate of the deck overall that this card exists, especially because so many decks can just chuck him in, so you are seeing him in a lot of decks on ranked. But anyway, back to past me. So, as I said, this is a tempo plant deck, and it's in kindness. It's in kindness instead of perseverance, because in perseverance, you get the benefit of having the passive, which allows you to get +1/+1 for killing monsters with KR, which is useful for a deck like this. However, I think it more helps you to snowball harder, rather than helps you to start snowballing in the first place. And I think it's more important, especially if you're going to try and take this more competitively and less for fun, that you try and make sure you start snowballing in the first place with this deck, rather than try and make yourself snowball harder when you do. And kindness is obviously more effective for that, being able to grant heals and health to units played early so that they can have a better chance of living the turn they're played. So, how does this work? Well, apparently the way I build plant decks is a little bit different to how some people do. For example, I've heard apparently people actually tend to run Grillbee instead of Dark Candy Tree because, well, the idea is that you're only going to get one buffer for Dark Candy Tree anyway, which means that effectively it's a Grillbee. And I get the idea, but considering that this is a rare, allow me to run 3 copies of it, and I do want to run 3 copies of it. Whereas Grillbee I can only run 2, as well as having slightly better stats, being a plant itself, so that can sometimes help synergy triggers or vines. I feel like just because Grillbee can do the same job, it doesn't mean that Grillbee should replace Dark Candy Tree. But as well as that, I also feel like Dark Candy Tree actually can get multiple buffs on the same target relatively regularly with this deck. And again, I think that's because I built it in kindness and I've built it to be more based around high health units. Essentially, the idea here is that you almost always open up with a Ghost Tree, if you have one, and you don't just play it the first turn you can. You wait until you have enough gold to combo it with something else, and you make it so that when it hits the board with at least like 4 or 5 health. And from there, you just try to get it to spiral and snowball. You use its transparency to make sure that on that first turn it can't be killed, and by the time your opponent even has a chance to target it, it usually has about 7 or 8 health on turn 4 or something, which of course makes it extremely hard to kill. Now, at that point, it's not really a threat though. Even though it has all that health, it only has 3 attack, so the opponent can afford to just ignore it for a bit and deal with your actual threats. That is why this deck runs a lot of things that might have otherwise been considered like greedy and a bit too much. For example, we're running both Noodles and Veteran. Now, while Noodles makes sense, that's an amazing artifact, that's a staple of any tempo-based deck that is just generally good while also being able to buff our units. Veteran is a bit more confusing to have in a deck like this. It might sound like it makes sense, but to a lot of people this might not make sense, because Veteran is usually an artifact that you cut eventually if you're optimizing a deck, just because although it's nice to get attack boosts for trading into things, a lot of the time it's not worth it. It's nice that you get that +1 attack, but a lot of the time if you want to use Veteran, it's in a deck that wants to kill the opponent early, but if you're trying to kill the opponent early with Veteran, then you should probably just be hitting him in the face and not trading into their units just to get +1 attack. Especially because afterwards the monster's going to be damaged, increasing the chance that your now higher value +1 attack monster is just going to get hit and die. So it's not too great. However, in Kindness it makes more sense. First of all, because obviously you have a chance to heal the damage that the unit will take after taking a trade. But also just generally, units are in this deck, and Kindness helps with this, gives them lots and lots of health. They just generally are going to live for a long time, and so that they get more time to capitalize on Veteran. God, it's driving me mad. I mean, I know that that was acceptable, but like, this is like my 5th attempt recording this now. Like, I don't know what it is today. Like, I know what I want to say, and then as I'm saying it, it just scrambled. I'm trying really hard here not to just be spouting gobbledygook. Well, anyway, so Ghost Tree is your big opener card. It's basically impossible for your opponent to kill it at first, as long as you play it right, and as long as it gets on the board and gets to a relatively high amount of health, a lot of opponents will just ignore it. Even if they do have something like a headshot, and even if this is something like a 3-8, even though that's scary, are they going to use a headshot on it? And the answer is a lot of the time, no. They won't use a headshot on it to start, because, well, it's only a 3 attack unit, and it kind of feels bad to use a headshot on only a 3 attack unit, especially knowing that it's a 3 cost unit, and they're playing a 7 cost spell that they only get 2 copies of. They're probably like, I don't know if this is worth it. It might have a lot of health, but like, is it actually a threat to me? And that's exactly what you kind of capitalize on with this deck, because you make it a threat. That is why we're running Veteran, as well as Noodles, as well as 3 Dark Candy Trees. Because these things combined make it very easy to turn this into a threat. And especially when you play a Dark Candy Tree, a lot of the time your opponent then has an awkward dilemma of, okay, do I now kill the 4/9 Ghost Tree that is threatening to grow even more, or do I kill the Dark Candy Tree? And a lot of the time people actually choose to kill the Dark Candy Tree. And to be fair, I kind of understand why, because this is a scary snowbally card. However, a lot of the time it's the wrong choice, but people will make it anyway, just because they're so scared of Dark Candy Tree. Because now you're going to have a 4/9 on the board, and yes, it's still only dealing 4 damage, but obviously that's more than 3, and because you have Veteran, you get to take free trades on all the monsters they place, so they can't get back on the board, and while doing it, you're building the attack of this so it becomes a bigger and bigger threat. This deck it also doesn't really have any interest in running most of the spells that you can. Force of Nature probably would be bad, but like it'd be like taking up a deck slot, and there's a lot of things that can go in this deck. Obviously, heal doesn't really have much use. I mean, yes, you can heal your damage monsters after they trade in, but like you don't want to take up a whole deck slot doing that. This deck doesn't really need draw, so longevity isn't needed. Octo Friend, I mean, it's a buff, but like again, the cards aren't really needed, and it's only +1/+1. Pesatime is the only one that I'm a little bit sad I'm not running, because, yeah, +1 dodge and a taunt if it was damaged is a really nice effect, but we can live without it. Again, it takes up a deck slot, And then, just generally, Campfire, we're not really hand buffing in this deck. Pie, I mean, it's convenient, like, in terms of getting back on board, but, like, typically it's not good tempo, and typically you're going to be the one getting onto the board first, so you shouldn't need it. Soothing, I mean, you shouldn't be needing to remove opponents' units too much here, because you should be able to just do trades for that, because, again, your units should be big enough. Feast would be nice, but the problem is obviously using it on a monster without killing it and getting value for it, it's a bit awkward to use. And we're not going to use a board clear in a tempo deck. So, as you can see, all these spells for the most part aren't very important, and if they are important, they're conditional or essentially something that could be useful but only in the right situation. So, it makes a lot of sense that instead of running any spells, we just run 2 bookshelves. They do feel a bit weird in the deck sometimes, since you usually see these in control decks, and these definitely are slow. You don't want these in your starting hand. You generally don't want to see them most of the time you play the deck, but I still think they're worth running because, again, they cover lose conditions. If you try to develop onto the board early, go for a push on your opponent, and then you're just about to kill them, but they pull out a Hypergoner, then longevity with Bookshelf is one of the only ways you can really recover from that. As well as that, if, say, you went against, like, some kind of, I know Nubit's been nerfed, but some Nubit-like deck where you got, like, a huge unit that just keeps coming back somehow, then Soothing is going to be very, very useful off Bookshelf. There's just a lot of spells from Bookshelf which can help you if you've fallen behind, and obviously, ideally, you shouldn't even fall behind in the first place, but considering this thing is only taking up 2 deck slots, and considering you do have your mulligan, it shouldn't be too hard to make sure this doesn't enter your hand, and of course, if it doesn't enter your starting hand, and you don't top deck it super early, then it's not really going to affect how able you are to, like, just jump onto the board right at the start. And that's basically the main thing that determines whether you win your kind of first push or not. So it doesn't really interfere too much with you winning your first tempo push, and it also helps for if you fall behind, it gives you a chance to potentially come back. Well, of course, running 2 vines. We're just running so many plants, there's no way we wouldn't be running this. This is also a nice way to come back. A lot of the time, since this deck doesn't have draw, or it almost never has draw problems, because usually by the time we'll be running out of cards, it's, you know, either able to play Bookshelf longevity, or by the time we run out of cards, it just has only 1. Well, that didn't come out very coherently, did it? What I was trying to get at is this deck runs basically no draw, since it doesn't need draw, and it basically never runs out of cards. And the reason I was talking about that in relation to Vine is that means that anything that can be reduced to a low cost for great stats is going to be pretty useful, since the weakness of a card like that is that it means you aren't getting so much value per card you draw, and of course it itself is not drawing you a card, so if you don't have many cards in your deck and you need more card draw, a card like this isn't going to be very effective. However, our deck almost never has an empty hand, despite the fact it runs almost no draw, so running Vine isn't a problem. That is what I was trying to say. Vine is especially nice though when you've lost everything on your board and you just dump these 2 things alongside some other unit, and it's a threatening enough board that even after a Hypergoner you can realistically afford it and still put the pressure right back on your opponent even after they've just used a board clear. Omega Flowey, I'm not gonna lie, is a bit of a meme. Like, I'll be fully honest, if you're like, oh god, no, not Omega Flowey, I don't own Omega Flowey, do not worry at all. Like, honestly, if I have to pick a worse card in this deck that still makes it into this deck, it's probably Omega Flowey. But that being said, I'm not fully memeing. There is use to having Omega Flowey in the deck. Essentially, it's more of that giving you a chance to come back. Because, again, since this deck is a tempo deck and it's really kind of about pushing its advantage, if it gets board cleared and if you're struggling, there's not many ways you can come back usually with a deck like this, and besides Bookshelf I don't have many ways to deal with that, so Omega Flowey is the other way to deal with that. If you're wondering how it's kind of a comeback mechanic, it's not too hard for you to get enough units on the board that at least for one single moment you have more units on the board than your opponent. Obviously it's hard to keep that once you've fallen behind, but it's not too hard to get a situation like that for a single moment, especially during your turn. And the reason why that's important is if you ever play Omega Flowey at a point at which you technically have more stuff on the board than your opponent, and you are ever able to afford load at a time when your opponent has a full board, that on its own is usually an instant game-winning play. So that's basically just one more out you can play to. However, if you don't have Omega Flowey, then I would just recommend cut it and replace it with something that's just more all-in on the early game. If you don't have Omega Flowey, then bookshelves are your only hope if you fall behind. So you probably want to go heavier on just making sure you win in the first place at the start of the game, rather than playing more to your outs. So yeah, I honestly genuinely don't know if the best version of this deck should run Omega Flowey or not, but hey, Omega Flowey's fun, so yeah, I'm putting them in. Flowey's a bit of a weird one. Like, they actually aren't very helpful for the most part when you're playing the deck normally, because they aren't great tempo unless they get a really good trade, and usually you just use them as direct damage rather than a unit, which obviously isn't ideal. And obviously, even though Flowey is generally a good card, one of their weaknesses is that you have to spend a lot of gold in total to use up all of what he gives you, and it's not what you want to do in a tempo deck. So why am I running him in the first place? Well, as much as I would like to try and cut him, at the end of the day, he is a plant, and this deck is severely lacking in any way to just directly deal with something it doesn't already have a unit ready to attack into. I think Flowey's the only haste in the deck. Yeah, Flowey is the only haste in the deck, and aside from Flower Fingers, which is very conditional, it's the only direct damage in the deck. And you don't want to use Flower Fingers on a monster if you can help it. You really want to use this on the opponent's face if you can. So, yeah. This is effectively your only way to just be like, wait, I need to kill that unit now. So even though I would like to try and find a way to cut Flowey, I feel like you do have to run it, just because otherwise anytime you run into a unit the opponent plays that you need to kill instantly, and for whatever reason your units on board aren't able to kill it with their attacks, Flowey is a lot of the time 100% necessary to prevent that from happening, even though it feels really bad because it makes you fall behind in tempo. Sometimes, if that target is valuable enough, it's still worth it. Of course, as well as that, Flowey combos amazingly with Dark Candy Tree, because you can, if you have enough gold, play Flowey, attack in, turn it into a 5/5, smacks in, dies, play it again, and instead of it doing like 3 damage, it deals 4. Getting +1 to each one of his hits gives a total of +3 damage, so instead of dealing a total of 9 damage, is it? Yeah, 9 damage across the 3 mini Floweys, you can deal a total of 12, which obviously is a good improvement for just having a Dark Candy Tree on the board. So yeah, that's why we're running Flowey. As for the others though, that's where it gets a bit messy. A lot of the cards that I haven't mentioned yet in this lineup are just kind of plant cards that are here. Oh yeah, I suppose I haven't mentioned Spider Flower yet. Spider Flower, just plain and simple, it's good tempo. You're not really copying something that gets super crazy value from the fact that you have more duplicates of it, but still, it's just good tempo. If you manage to land this synergy, Spider Flower into Bloody Tree, that's a huge play. That's a 4 cost, what? 6/9, right? It's a 4 cost 6/9 that gets +1 to attack at the start of your turn, so it's kind of like a 4 cost 7/9. That's a huge play, especially if you manage to pull it off early. So that's why Spider Flower's here. Flower Fingers I already mentioned, that's kind of for reach damage. You can use it to hit opponents, but if you can help it, you're going to use this for reach damage to kill your opponent and finish them off if you're just a little bit off lethal to end out the game. Really, really powerful when it comes to that. But yeah, you'll usually play it on a full board and get 4 damage to their face. What about the rest of these? Ficus Liquor is a bit of a weird one. You might be confused why I'm only running like one of them. I mentioned this deck doesn't really need draw, so that's why I'm only running one of them. I actually was going to run 0 of them. However, there's one reason in particular that I've got Ficus Liquor in here, and it's not for the draw, it's just because it is the cheapest plant in the game. It's only 1 less than all these 3 cost ones, but still, if you're trying to activate the Spider Flower synergy and you only have 6 gold, you need a Ficus Liquor in your hand, and there's no other way to really do it. So I thought, right, well, I guess Ficus Liquor is going in. I think there is another 2 cost plant. I think it's the like 2/3/2 flower. I forgot what it's called, but I'm not gonna lie, that card doesn't look that good to me. And to be fair, Ficus Liquor does look like a good card to me, even though draw isn't exactly what I want. So, and I mean, just because draw isn't what I want doesn't mean it's useless. So yeah, that's why it's in the deck. But I only run 1 copy because again, it only exists as a cheaper trigger for Spider Flower. It's not really helpful for its draw. Cactus we're just running 1 copy of. It's actually not a bad idea to run like more than one copy of Cactus in this deck, but obviously personally I'm just leaning towards one because they're not very offensive. But oftentimes Cactuses will save your life whenever your opponent just plays a huge taunt. If you have any cacti on the board, to just smack into the taunt and instantly kill it, it's really, really nice. And a lot of the time, they actually don't kill the cactus. You know, usually people kill these things straight away, but when you have so many things in your deck that your opponent wants to kill straight away, your opponent sees Ghost Tree, they want to kill it. The opponent sees a Bloody Tree getting out of control, they want to kill it. Your opponent sees Dark Candy Tree, they want to kill it. Everything you play, for the most part, is something that your opponent just sees and is like, kill it now. So, because of that, they often don't have the time or don't have the resources to be able to deal with Cactus, and it often gets away with just being slapped onto the board. Gets +1 from Kindness's passive, and then with that 4 health it just sits there, not getting challenged until the opponent needs to use a unit to defend itself, and then it gets instantly killed by it. So it's genuinely not a meme in this deck. It's pretty good, it's just, it's not aggressive enough that I want to run more than one copy of it. Of course, if you're just trying to hit face with this, it's pathetic. So yeah. Bloody Tree itself I haven't really talked about. I originally thought Bloody Tree might struggle to fit in this deck, and the main reason it ended up actually slotting in, and not only slotting in but getting 3 copies of it, was because I realised that the slot it was competing for was Ficus. And at first, I thought to myself, yeah, I'll probably use Ficuses then, and just like one Bloody Tree. Until I realised that, usually Ficus is only getting +1 attack per turnabout. And if I look at it like that, then on average a Bloody Tree is literally just a Ficus with +1 attack. So... Also, Ficus isn't great if you get Hypergonad, which is something you're very scared about with this deck. So yeah, I realised that even though there are situations in which Ficus can be better than Bloody Tree... Oh yeah, I should have actually brought up Ficus while I was talking about it, is this. While there are situations where Ficus can be better than Bloody Tree, generally Bloody Tree is better, and it is just very good stats. It's very hard for your opponent to kill. And obviously the last thing that made me think, oh wait, I don't need to just run one more of these, I need all 3 of these, is, of course, Spider Flower is huge on this card. Donation Stump is one that I don't see many people use. I get a feeling it's pretty good. I kind of am surprised I don't see people use it. It's a 4-cost 3/4, makes the opponent lose 1 gold, but Synergy gives you 1 gold. So essentially this is a 3-cost 3/4 plan, as long as you trigger its Synergy, that also takes 1 gold for the opponent, which effectively makes it a 2-cost 3/4. So, yeah. Now, it's obviously not as busted as a 2-cost 3/4 plant would be, because, of course, you can't really play it on turn 2, even if it would technically be a net, like, gain of 2 gold. A net loss, you know what I mean? So, that makes it a lot less powerful than it would be if it was a literal 2/3/4. But still, I think that the losing gold on your opponent's side can be really disruptive. It can make it really hard. I already mentioned that you've got so many things that your opponent just wants to kill as soon as possible in this deck. So making them lose gold, even if it's just 1 at a time, is a nice way to mess with them and increase the chances that they don't have the resources to deal with all of your threats. And the Synergy obviously is just a nice way to make sure that you're not playing for bad tempo either. And you will be able to activate the Synergy a lot of the time, because as you can see, this deck is... like, some decks are like half in on the plants. This is like basically all in. Like plant, 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 plant. Not plant, not plant, 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 plant. Literally the 2 bookshelves are the only non-plants in the entire deck. And there's no spells, so like that's literally 23 plants in the deck. So you get what I mean. And now plant probably doesn't sound like a word to you anymore. It's not hard to trigger the Synergy. It's a little bit hard, I suppose, when you're early in the game, which is why I'm only running 2 of them, because getting these in your starting hand can be rough unless you get them with a Ficus Licker. But to be honest, playing them dry, as long as you're in a decent situation, isn't even that bad either. It's still kind of a 3-cost 3/4, and a 3-cost 3/4 plant isn't bad. So, yeah. Which ones I'm going to talk about then? I think I've talked about most of these. Oh, is it all of them? Oh yeah, that's all of them. Oh yeah, I guess one more thing I'll just cover is I just realised I didn't mention Spider Flower. I learned recently can actually copy Vine, which is huge. So yeah, I think the only other target I haven't mentioned for Spider Flower is Flowey. I suppose Cactus can also sometimes be nice. You can target your Ghost Tree with Spider Flower. I would only recommend this if you already have another Ghost Tree on the board. That's nice because obviously the Spider Flower itself and the copied Ghost Tree are both plants, so it gets +2 health. But a lot of the time, even though the Ghost Trees are super useful in the deck, they're only really super useful at the start of the game. And as well as that, because you already have 3 copies of them, you often don't need more. So even though this is a super valuable card in the deck, in a kind of unintuitive way, I don't think they're always the best copy target. Obviously, if you don't have any other targets, still go ahead, copy it, but like, I don't think it's your highest priority target, really, with Spiderflower. Obviously, your more highly prioritized Vines, Bloody Trees, and honestly, even Cactuses. Cactus is a nice one to... Cacti are, like, nice to duplicate with this. So yeah, now, you might be wondering, damn, you talked about that deck for a while. Why did you talk so much about it? I don't want to play it. Now, I enjoyed playing this before, but as you can see, I hit Legend. It was a painful experience this time around, because I got to 1 game away from Legend at Diamond 1, multiple times, and 4 times in a row, I suddenly went on a losing streak the second I'm 1 game away. It would just be that whatever deck I switched to, the person I was matched against was always running something that countered it pretty damn hard. And it only happened when I was 1 game away from Legend, as I say, 4 times in a row. So now that I am in Legend, kind of a bit fed up. Kind of just don't want to play ranked. So I'm really hoping that I don't get booted out of Legend by losing this game, because that would suck. And I'm a little bit nervous, because even though I do genuinely believe this is a good deck, I've already mentioned that I think Shorm is really scary against this deck. But also, oh, I just realised I got the site muted. Ah, whatever, it's fine. But also I'm nervous because I think that when it comes to these kind of tempo decks, I know this sounds like, oh, then it's bad, but like, it's kind of similar to the base Justice deck. It's not as good against Legend players, and that's not just because Legend players are better, although that's obviously part of it. It's also not as good against Legend players because just generally they seem to be especially more experienced when it comes to dealing with tempo decks. Like, they just make a lot more correct decisions with tempo decks. Like, it's the same for other decks as well, but like, I feel like especially tempo decks, like, Legend players know how to play around. So, like, tempo works really well getting to Legend, and then once you're at Legend, you probably want to swap to combo or control. So yeah, you might have thought that was a bit of a weird start for this game, by the way. Obviously, I just kind of held my hand for ages, which is weird for an aggressive deck, and then it took me a while to even do anything, but you can see I've kind of made the right play, because now I still have a decent amount of leftover gold on me, and as well as that, I'm actually still winning on board. So this is one thing I want you to understand if you are going to try and play this deck, is that you're not just dumping your hand with this deck, as you often are with a lot of other aggressive decks. You are making sure that if you are dumping something, you are going to be playing it at a time at which it's actually a good idea to play it. I know it sounds like very obvious, but it's something that you could easily mess up, since most tempo decks just reward you for dropping everything down as soon as possible. This one, not so much. I want to go for some kind of cheeky Omega Fly play here, but I don't think I should. I don't think I have a way of making it work. It feels weird playing a Flower Fingers here without a full board, but... I mean, I could drop the Bloody Tree, but then that breaks the 2 Spider Flowers unless I can get the Vine cheap enough. I think... do I actually Instant Noodles this? This is like a high-rolly play, but like... Oh, okay, right, okay, that's nice, that's nice. So we can... steal his gold. Wait, did he have any gold, or... was he at 1 gold and he went down to 0, or did he already have 0? Even if he already had 0, it's still a 3-3-4, it's not bad. So I've got a full board now. Yeah, they're going to have to use something like that to deal with it. But they can't even afford to play the Zephyr, so we're in a pretty good spot, actually. I was a little bit nervous. I genuinely thought that this first game might go horribly. But it looks like this should be a good start. To be fair, I don't think Mines would have a good matchup against this deck. I don't know like exactly what he's running that's Mines, but generally Mines is obviously going to have a longer game plan, and he's going to be relying on burning me out. But if I'm playing Kindness, and on top of that I'm playing a like early game tempo deck, it's rough for him. Is there a potential way I could just bulldoze him, like, right now? think so, but honestly, I don't think we're far off. Okay, I think I get rid of the police block, and I think I drop Omega Flowey. Am I memeing if I drop Omega Flowey? You know what, no, I'm not going to throw, I'm not dropping Omega Flowey, because I think if he headshots it, I'm actually in a bit of a bad spot. I do have the load spell, but obviously it's slow. This is just such a good play that I don't think I should drop Omega Flowey. It's close. I think I still win usually if I drop Omega Flowey there, but like I have to remember, I'm still going to have Omega Flowey next turn. If this guy was Determination and he could Hypergon me right now, I should play Omega Flowey. But considering I know the best thing he has against this board is Prison Bar's Strafe, which still leaves me with an advantage on board, I think that's still fine. Alright then. Is this the point where I Omega Flowey? Or is this still not it? Now we have 2 Bleach Trees. I think I'm safe to drop this one, just for some better tempo. And drop... That should be a win. I don't think you can come back from that one. Yeah, they can't come back from that. Okay, so that's given me some confidence. I know now if I lose one game, I'm not going to instantly be kicked out of Legend. Cactus in the starting hand is a weird one. Like, I don't think you keep it, but like, it's a consideration. It depends on the matchup, but I don't know what I'm up against, so I don't think I should keep it. Okay. The Ghost Tree top deck there was huge. If I didn't get this off the top of my deck, that was good. Like, this would be an awful starting hand. But a lot of the deck is stuff that's not bad at the start, so you've got a decent chance of drawing something alright. Okay, it's turn 3 now, so my passive is active, right? Yes. So I think now I drop this, and I think I actually drop both Ghost Trees. Just because if I drop Flowey, it's a bit of a waste. And I think I should be dropping 2 cards this turn. Oh yeah, I completely forgot to mention. You probably already knew, but Canis' passive will always give the rightmost ally monster +1 health as long as there's no monsters to heal. Which means that you should keep the rightmost space empty almost all the time for your Dark Candy Tree, so you can just do, you know, smack. Now, I'm a little bit concerned because I don't know what this guy's deck is at all. He's running Perseverance and Poke Noodles, which implies that he's trying to play aggressive, but they just play Clan Girl. And they're in Legends, so I don't think they're just memeing. Like, they're level 732. Okay, it's a Chris deck. So what's the... So you do Siphoning, that makes sense. I'm guessing this is sort of a combo. But I think, aren't you still just dead? You're, like, still dead, aren't you? Yeah. Well, oh wait, they're still dead, they just don't know it. Okay, right. Well, that was a fast get. Gee, okay, so I was getting nervous, because this deck had just been losing so many times in a row, like, when I was trying to get to Legend, and now I'm in Legend, it's actually doing alright. Again, it might just be a fluke. Ooh. Oh, okay, that hurts, never mind. Oh, okay, they played it safe. That was smart, like, that is exactly what they should do. Okay, what do I actually do here now? That's actually awkward. Because, like, this is nasty. Because if I can wipe the Toxic Cloud, but if I do, the Chris just smacks into my Dark Candy Tree. Wait, actually, no, I'm alright, because if I do the maths, I forgot about KR. I'm not alright. Still, I think this is probably the best I can do. I should get a shot at, like, being able to do 3 burst damage to them. I don't think that this deck would be running healing. I just need to be able to finish this guy off fast enough that he can't just kill me right here. Which is possibly... Okay, phew, it only healed 1 health to his face. No! 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 Oh! That is I'm disgusted. I'm about to vomit here. That was... Oh! Well... No thank you. Please tell me this means thinks he draws a set to 3-2. I'm almost certain it would. But that'd be funny. Well then. Yeah, I was like, I know that Seat of Gods isn't the biggest thing you can hit me with. Am I just dead? Is that it? Okay, please attack him with the... Wait. Okay. I can use Test of Will. Oh wait, I don't have enough gold. I don't have enough gold. I am dead? Oh, not technically dead like right this second, but like probably dead. Actually, I am dead right this second. God damn it! Did I misplay there, or is that just unfortunate? Like, can I do anything about that? Or is that just luck of the draw? I might have to watch that game back, like, when I'm editing it, because... I feel like I played that perfectly, and I just kind of got screwed, but I might be forgetting something. I'm just trying to think if there's any way I could have dealt with the Chris. I don't think there was. End off this video, I just remembered that there was actually something else I wanted to talk about that I forgot to add, so I'm just adding it in now in editing. And that is that I didn't talk about other considerations for the deck that aren't in the current deck but could be in here. There was actually one change I made to the deck very recently, although other than that, the deck has mostly remained the same as when I first made it, except for the whole Ficus being cut for Bloody Tree. But the big one as well was I used to be running 2 red bushes. Now, I barely ever see anyone use this plant card, but it's genuinely a good plant card. Even though its effect is a bit underwhelming, you need a full board just to make it a 3-cost 4/4, which is overstatted, but not even that overstatted. What's more impressive is the fact it has transparency. You'd be surprised how many times you get away with making like a board at a stupid time that you should definitely be punished for, just because you have transparency. It's especially nice because we have transparency on Ghost Tree as well. And without Red Bush, it does feel a little bit bad that you can't always go for these openings where you play these units that your opponent literally has no way to kill. Of course, I think that replacing those red bushes with more donation stunts and Bloody Trees in the end is a net benefit to the deck. But if you are going to cut some cards from the deck, for example, if you don't have Omega Flowey, then Red Bush is one of the first cards I would recommend adding back in to take their place. Or, for example, if you found Cactus was too memey and you didn't find it getting that much use, you could cut Cactus for it. Red Bush is mostly good at the start of the game in combination with Ghost Tree, like I said, because it allows you to play a good started plant on the board that charges your Ghost Tree, that is also has transparency alongside it, so that your opponent literally is unable to kill any of your starting units, and is only able to start damaging your units once you start playing your bigger units, and you already have an established board to build off of. So that's quite a useful card. The only other considerations in general, I would say, would be cards like Baron, or cards like, of course, Grillby. Just generally buff everything on the board cards. Quite nice in this deck. There's not really many legendaries that fit well into this deck, except Flowey, which of course is already in here. Of course, we're not really expelled, so Hooded Rouser doesn't really have a space. Biker Lance is a bit slow for this, and we don't really get much of a benefit from the hand buff. We don't need the cards that Legendary Artifact provides, you know. A lot of these aren't super useful. I suppose if, for whatever reason, you found the Royal Kindness could be really good with this deck, then I guess you could run Alphys, but from what I've seen so far, Royal Kindness seems to be basically like the worst one of these. It's really not useful in my experience. So yeah, you can, and at this point we're starting to get into the kind of expensive legendaries, and really I think past this point the only ones that make sense are Susie, but even then, like, most of your stuff is actually bigger than 3/3, so like not even Susie. And Ralsei, well, you've got decent copy targets, But even as a Ralsei lover like me, I have to say, I'm not sure if this is the deck for it. I suppose you have Cactus, but yeah, for the most part, it's like not that important. I suppose you could sneak a Shorm in, but I feel like at that point you're playing too slow. So yeah, and of course now we're getting into like the 10 costs, and it's like you're not going to be running 10 costs, 11 costs here. No. So yeah, as well as that, I mentioned before that Kindness and Perseverance are the main two souls for this plant deck. There is one other one you could consider, and it's probably not what you're thinking. You could try Patience. Don't mind this deck, this is just to get that task done with... That was not a joke I made on oh my god. This is to get that quest done where you have to get a huge unit. I was using Blowing Gravix. But yeah, you could use Patience, and you might be like, wait, why use Patience in a plant deck? Well, for one, if you were going to pivot to a more draw-oriented plant deck, Exploration is obviously just good draw. And Frozen Energy is nice and burst if you need it, and I mentioned that the deck kind of struggles with that. But more to the point, well, two things. One, Mel. I actually didn't even think about that until I just looked at it now. But Mel looks like a great card to run with this, considering your Ghost Trees tend to get high health totals. The new Self-Reflection being used on your own allies, giving your high health Ghost Trees candy is going to make them a terrifying threat, although it might be a bit memey. But getting to the actual big thing, it's the passive. Now this passive generally more favours control-y or combo-y decks. However, it's useful in this deck because Dark Candy Tree costs 5. And why does that matter? Because Spider Flower summons a copy of a plant or spider in your hand that costs 4 or less. And now, usually, with most cards in the game that work like that, they say base cost. But as we've seen by the fact that Spider Flower can summon vines, even though they cost 12 at base, you can summon things even if they have a base cost higher than 4, as long as they're reduced down to 4 or less with Spider Flower. And while this deck mostly just has good tempo plays and doesn't necessarily have stuff you get massive value from copying, Dark Candy Tree is an exception. Dark Candy Tree is such a valuable card that I do think it could potentially be worth running Patience, primarily just to potentially hit a discount on Dark Candy Tree with Change of Winds, that then becomes super useful when you can use it in combination with Spider Flower to copy it. That being said, I do feel like this is the most conditional way that you can play plants and make them good. I mean, again, there are synergies here, absolutely, but a lot of them are very conditional. So, all that being said, I do think it seems like Patience would be the most memey way to play plants, but I can't lie to you, I haven't played much plants in Patience, so I could be wrong. That's the main takeaway though. I wouldn't recommend with Determination or Bravery or... Does Integrity really have anything? Nah, not really. Integrity, you'd rather build a zoo deck like this. By the way, this is one of the main decks I use to climb to Legends, so hey, I'm not making a video on this one just because it's quite straightforward, but like, I mean, if you just want a straightforward, fast-paced climb to Legend deck, there you go. And I don't think Justice would have much... I mean, it has a good passive, but I don't think it has much synergy. So yeah. So, as I say, I recommend Kindness. I think Kindness is the most consistent, but I think that any choice of Kindness, Patience, and Perseverance are like valid if you're tryharding. It's just that I think that Patience and Perseverance rely a little bit too much on conditional things that might not happen, whereas Kindness is 100% consistent. Well, anyway, I fulfilled my obligation now. I'm not going to play any more games. I know that was only 2, but I am really scared of losing Legend at this point. Like, I know I can get it back, but I can't be bothered to. And if I lose another game in a row, then obviously it's probably going to boot me out of Legend, and I don't want to go through that again. So, sorry about that. I'll see you in the next one, though. Probably be making a video about BTDX next, so I'll see you then. Bye.